All right, we're gonna take this episode on the road. This is gonna be our first on-location episode for the channel. I happened to be in Torrance, California recently, and I visited the Stuart bookstore. This bookstore, if you're an admirer of illustration, comic art, if you're a practitioner of any one of those things, this is like Disneyland for you. I had long heard about the Stuart store, and it definitely lived up to all the hype that I've heard about it and even more. The shelves are stocked with art books, graphic novels, rare, hard to find books that are long out of print, artist editions, old magazines, but again, very much focused on the art part of comics and illustration. A lot of process stuff. I picked up a few books while I was there. They will definitely be featured on some upcoming videos here on the channel. But sort of serendipitously, while I was there, they happened to be having an Al Hirschfeld art show upstairs. I've talked about Al Hirschfeld on this channel before, but a really long time ago. He happens to be one of my favorite illustrators, one of the illustrators that I sort of like grew up with. I think of Al Hirschfeld and Norman Rockwell. Those were like the two illustrators that were somehow or another like in the house when I was growing up. We had Norman Rockwell art books and calendars, and I used to love seeing Al Hirschfeld's illustrations in the New York Times. Often they would be in like the arts and leisure section. And for me, I really loved the drawings because they kind of looked like animation cartoon drawings, or even like the closest thing that I would see to like comic art in a newspaper. As I got older, I really started to appreciate the skill and the craft behind Al Hirschfeld's art and illustrations. So it was a real treat and a great surprise that I sort of stumbled upon the opening of this Al Hirschfeld show. The room upstairs above the store was really great because it was sort of like almost like a warehouse of sorts. Stuart has a collection of original art from all different illustrators and comic artists. But even better than that was seeing all of these Al Hirschfeld originals. And it's for a show called Backstage and Backlot with Al Hirschfeld. And it's organized and curated by the Al Hirschfeld Foundation. Since it was the opening of the show, I was looking around and there happened to be a gentleman there named David Leopold. He's the creative director of the Al Hirschfeld Foundation. And he also happens to be the author and the mind behind this new book, Hirschfeld's Sondheim. It's a collection, it's a poster book actually, and it's a collection of all of the illustrations that Al Hirschfeld has created that are inspired and about Stephen Sondheim's plays and movies. I have to say, I don't really know much about Stephen Sondheim. I've heard that name before. I know he's written a lot of different musicals and plays and movies, and he's very like well regarded in Broadway and all that kind of stuff. And I know that Al Hirschfeld was a big part of the theater world in New York City. But this book is really beautiful to look at, and it is called a poster book because you could actually tear the pages out of here without any tear marks. They come out really, really clean, and you could just put them on your wall and frame them and treat them like a print or a poster. David was kind enough to come up to me and just kind of show me around, ask if I had any specific questions. And being an admirer and a fan of Al Hirschfeld, I definitely did. And we got to talking, and it became very clear that he knew what he was talking about. He's sort of like an expert in all things Al Hirschfeld. So it was very impromptu and not planned, but I stopped him mid-conversation and asked if I could film him and have him kind of take us through the show and talk about some of Hirschfeld's work and process and share it on the channel. And he was kind enough to agree to that. Since this was very impromptu and unplanned, I didn't have like my microphone or anything like that with me, and all I had was my cell phone to film it with. The audio is pretty good here, but of course it's not as perfect as it would be with a microphone, but I'm gonna do my best in the editing to enhance the audio and make sure it's as easy to listen to as possible. Also, there were so many pieces in that show, and it was so impressive and so amazing to see in real life. But there's also glare coming from the lights above and some of the plastic that was covering the artwork. So I tried my best to capture those pieces as best I could. But keep in mind, there is some glare. I'm gonna put up on the screen some better quality scans of those pieces just so you could get a better understanding of the exact pieces that we're talking about as we're talking about them. As you can probably tell from the videos on my channel, I'm very much interested in the process behind these artists that we talk about, what supplies they used, how they went about making this work, and I know a lot of you are as well. So the focus behind a lot of my questions for David had to do with that kind of stuff, process stuff, materials, perhaps some of the creative thinking that might have been going on in Hirschfeld's mind as he was making these things. And I'm really glad that David was there to offer that kind of insight. One of the things that I was curious about was materials, like what kind of pens or brushes did Al Hirschfeld use? Did he go back and forth between pen and brush? I have seen a lot of his videos online. These would have been old videos from old movies and documentaries, but oftentimes it looked like he was using a dip pen. But then there's really this smooth, illustrative brush quality sometimes to his work as well. So I was curious as to what combination, if any, of brush and pen Al Hirschfeld used.
He was pretty consistent he used a crow-quill pen, one that dips into an inkwell. What is interesting about Hirschfeld is he didn't use a variety of nibs. He used one nib, and that made a thin line, and when he wanted a thicker line, he would just keep going over the line.
Oh, is that right?
To get the thickness that he wanted. So we see these, one-line drawings that looks like, oh, it's just his hand. It's all on the wrist. Takes a minute or two. That's not how it was. He used to say that when he was rushed, he did a complicated drawing, and when he had time, he did a simple drawing.
You guys know I'm a big proponent of sketchbooks, sketchbooking. It's been a big part of my process over the last few years. I've kind of brought that back into my process, not only just for ideating and staying creative and keeping my skills as sharp as they can, but also using it as a part of my preliminary process as well. So I was curious if sketchbooks played a part in Al Hirschfeld's process at all. Did he do preliminary thumbnails? How did he use his sketchbooks to help create these masterpieces?
What's interesting also about these is, so he did these in rehearsals or on location, on films. And that allowed him to bring his regular size sketchbook, which was usually 9x12, spiral bound. He didn't use them in a linear fashion where we see, oh, all these shows are from 1963. There would be 3 shows from 1963, then one from 1975, one from 1978, one from 1962. I mean, he just picked up whatever book was close to him when he left to go to the theater. Now, when he saw a show in performance, there wasn't a lot of light in the theater. There's never a lot of light in the theater unless you're on stage. And he also didn't want to distract the audience. So he trained himself to draw in the dark. He sat in a dark room in his house and he tried to draw things. And when he thought he was getting pretty good, he went on a subway and drew passengers on the subway. And when he got out, he took a look at his sketchbook that he kept in his pocket. This was a tiny sketchbook that was full of drawings, but also words, because the drawings showed him what it looked like, but the words told him what it felt like. And that is so important in Hirschfeld's work. We think of him as caricature, and you're going to call something that's a very good word. He didn't shy away from it, but he saw himself as a characterist. He was doing character drawings, and that's why I think his drawings are still so lively, and it's why his drawings are such big hits with animators, because he has imbued this. There's not that many lines, and yet we care greatly about them, both aesthetically but also in an emotional way. We relate to the performers, even when we don't know who they are. And the drawings would show it what it looked like, but the words would tell him. So if somebody had kinky hair, he might put Brillo pad, because that's the effect he was trying to get. Or chicken fricassee. If someone's arm is just hanging on the side, he saw that as his phrase that would remind him of what that felt like was that. So the location drawings and even the backstage drawings, these were done on a full-size sketch pad, but and there he worked in pencil almost always. And then he came back to his studio. He would take his sketches. If it was from a production, he would often ask the press agent for production photos. which he used much more to just make sure he was getting the facts right, because he took the job as a visual journalist fairly seriously. But then he would start working on pencil on a board that was roughly 20 by 30 inches. And that was for, I would say, for the last 50 years of his career, he worked on a board that size. Early in his career, he worked on a much smaller size board because he thought to get the best fidelity in the reproduction was to draw it the same size as it would appear. And he came to the conclusion that that was the engraver's art, not his, and he should do what he wanted to do. So he worked on a bigger size board. In maybe the last 30 years of his career, the board size was 21 by 27, which was not some sort of golden proportion, but it's because the largest envelopes he could find were 22 by 28. And so he got the boards that fit those envelopes very easily.
Very, very practical. I love it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that he didn't finish one sketchbook before moving on to another. I think that's something that a lot of us can relate to. I know I talk to a lot of artists that are kind of more into the idea of getting sketchbooks and owning sketchbooks than they are of drawing in them. Sometimes there could be like a little anxiety, sometimes like break through and actually start a sketchbook. But Hirschfeld wasn't really chronological in his approach to using his sketchbooks. So it's kind of cool to see that he was very nonchalant about his sketchbook approach. When I was going around looking at all the original Hirschfeld pieces, one of the things that really struck me was that there were these like tonal drawings, these wash drawings. That's something that I'm really not familiar with in terms of Hirschfeld's catalog of work. I just know, like I think most of us, that very black and white, high contrast line work. But apparently he would work in wash and tone, and it was so great to see that stuff in person.
So these works are a little bit different in the sense that they're tonal drawings, they're wash drawings. And while these appeared in the New York Times, they appeared in the magazine section, which had a better quality paper than newsprint. You know, newsprint is the cheapest paper known to mankind. And he had to learn how to do his drawings so they would look good on this cheap paper. He told me that he really couldn't do a very thick line in his drawings until the 70s because the quality of the reproduction sort of caught up with his ability. But when he could do something on a little bit finer paper, he wanted to try something different. This was an artist that was not content with what he achieved. He was always sort of a restless experimenter. And he was always sort of changing up what he did, because when you're in a publication that often, if you're doing the same drawing, the one thing that's going to happen is you're not going to be in that publication that often. So he had to keep finding new ways of sort of delivering the story. And so these were done for an article that appeared in the magazine section about shows that were going to be opening in the fall. And so he decided he would do something different because they were different than his cast drawings. Say over here, these are two different shows that are opening on Broadway in that week. And he uses this sort of backstage feel to give us both shows. You know, they sort of stand on their own 2 feet, you know, each one, but together they make even a more wonderful whole. That's Rita Hayworth over here, but it looks just like her. I mean, that's the amazing thing. There's almost nothing there, and yet it looks just like her.
With so few lines, too, he's able to capture the likeness of that actor or
Right.
performer. It does speak to the animation inspiration that he kind of left off.
Well, animators study his work not just for the character, but he can make something move in a drawing that it takes them 24 frames to do. You know, and how that sort of kinetic energy in his work is not something that, there's no formula, there's no algorithm. And I'm not even sure he knew how he did it. He just trusted it, and he went with it, and he served it.
Somebody like Al Hirschfeld, much like a lot of the artists that I talk about on this channel, I admire them not only for the work that they create, but the work ethic behind the work. I love trying to understand more about their day-to-day, how they approached making art, how much they worked.
He was ubiquitous in a way that few artists will have ever been ubiquitous. The list of publications that his work appeared in it's a much shorter list to say what magazines and publications he didn't appear in the 20th century. And it isn't because it came easy, it's because he worked every day. And I say work, he did not use that word. Drawing was like breathing to him. It was not work at all. He told me the only work he ever did was in his garden. You know, he felt that if you did something long enough, you were going to get a certain bit of authority. And he drew every day. Every day. Now, he was lucky. He had assignments every day. There was always somebody who wanted Hirschfeld to draw something. And that started as a young man. He was in 3 different newspapers in New York. He was working for 6 different film studios. He was doing, you know, magazine work, anything. And as he got older and he went exclusive for New York newspapers to the New York Times, there was somebody who always said, oh, we should get Hirschfeld to do this. And he would do it. You know, he loved to draw. And I always marvel at he starts with these really iconic figures, Greta Garbo, Mae West, the Marx Brothers. And they were easy to draw because they were essentially caricatures. And yet, as the American drama changes, you get a much more serious movies and plays. That should be the end of a caricaturist's career, and it was for many of his contemporaries. But for Hirschfeld, who was interested in character, somebody who looked just like you and me, that was something. That was a character. Everybody has a character, and he would plumb it. He said that he took the character created by the playwright, portrayed by the actor, and he would reinvent it for a reader.
So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that little bit of an insight into Al Hirschfeld's work. Like I said, this is my second video about Al Hirschfeld. And this time around, I actually have an Al Hirschfeld expert to talk about his process and offer us a lot of insight that I otherwise wouldn't have. So thank you to David for coming on the channel and talking about this work. If you're interested in seeing this show, this Al Hirschfeld original art show, it's at the Stuart bookstore in Torrance, California, and it's up until the 30th of November. So if you're anywhere in the area or planning on traveling to that area and you're a fan of original art, Al Hirschfeld, it's definitely worth checking out. Certainly the Stuart store is, like I said, Disneyland for people like us, so I definitely recommend it. They also have an online store as well where you could order from, I think, around the world too. And if you want to get this new Hirschfeld's Sondheim book, there's some amazing pieces in here. I think this would actually make a really great Christmas gift. I know a couple people that I might be buying this for Christmas. You can order this through the alhirschfeldfoundation.org. This is published by Abrams Comic Art. You can also pick this up at the Stuart bookstore. I'll leave links in the description below this video for the Al Hirschfeld Foundation as well as the Stuart bookstore. Once again, thanks so much to David Leopold for offering this insight. Thanks to Stuart for allowing us to film in the store. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, please do consider subscribing to the channel. Also, if you want to see other videos and content from me, stuff I don't post anywhere else, check out my Patreon. I'm currently working on a little comic story over there, and I post a lot of the process behind that comic and the finished pages of it as well. And I thought that I would offer it to maybe a larger audience for this month of November. I'm doing like a extended Black Friday kind of deal where for the remainder of this month of November, I'm going to offer that at a 20% discount. So if you're interested, this month might be the time for you to try it out. I'll leave all the info about that in the description below, link to the Patreon if you're interested in any of that. So again, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.
It's sort of like a comic strip, sequential.
Yeah, sequential art. Well, this is very different, but I think it's also very telling in the sense that Hirschfeld tells the story, sort of the rise and fall of an actress. And it's not a tragic story. In 1943 when this was done, if an actor got a job that ran a whole season, that was a great thing.